गुड मॉर्निंग, वेलकम टू वी लर्न में आपका स्वागत है. द टॉपिक फॉर टुडेज डिस्कशन इज कंज्यूमर एटीट्यूड, सेशन 7 of consumer behavior. The topic is of vital importance and we are discussing here consumer attitude. What basically attitude means, what would be its functions, what are the models and what are the learning attitudes, changing attitudes, we will all be discussing here. Now, when we talk of attitudes are basically learned predisposition to respond to an object or class of objects in a consistently favorable or unfavorable way. They are the expressions of inner feelings that reflects whether a person is favorably or unfavorably predisposed to some object. In marketing, object can be a brand name, a service, it could be a service provider, a retail store, a company, an advertisement. In a sense, any marketing stimuli could be termed as an object. Attitude is also an opinion about a product, a service, or any kind of response is an attitude. When we talk of marketing functions, functions of attitude helps us in learning how they serve the consumer. In many cases, marketers attempt, to influence effective responses by using messages that appeal to consumer on the basis of one or more of the four functions that are served. The first function is utilitarian function. Utilitarian function is, do the product provide some benefit or reward? What is the utility of the product? If I'm buying, say for example, a pen of a particular brand, what is the benefit I would get it from it? What is the utility? So this attitude function, the utilitarian function, serves consumer in achieving desired benefit. We hold certain brand attitude partly because of the brand's utility. We have some beliefs, some thought process, partly because of the utility of the brand. If a product has been useful to us in the past, our attitude towards it, the chances that we buy it in future are likely to go high. Say for example, if I had a headache and I had a severe headache, I take a Combiflam, and if that Combiflam, one pill of Combiflam subsides my pain, the utility of that pain relief pill was to subside my pain, and it was able to do it. The chances that I buy the same pill again in future goes up. And say for example, if Combiflam did not subsided my pain, then what happened? I would not go in for the same pill again, right? Another is value expressive function. When we talk of value expressive, the question arises, does the product say something about who I am or would like to be? Is it self-expressive? Like when we talk about an ad of L'Oreal, the caption is because I'm worth it. It satisfies your ego. It is self-expressive. It expresses you, your identity. So when it expresses the self-image, value and outlook, particularly in a high involvement product, that becomes a value expressive function. If a consumer segment holds positive attitude towards being in fashion, then their attitudes are likely to be reflected in this viewpoint. Advertisers often appeal to the value expressive nature of attitudes by implying that purchase or use of a certain product will lead to desired achievement, self-enhancement or independence. When we talk of ego defensive function of attitude, here the question is, does that product protect my self-esteem? Does it help in overcoming any self-doubt? Right? We use cosmetics, a lot of cosmetics like deodorants, anti-pimples, or we use a lot of mouthwashes and toothpaste. They are the products to cover your self-esteem, to subside your ego, to self-image. So attitudes which are formed to protect the ego or self-image from anxiety and threats help fulfill this function. Advertising capitalizes on the fear of social embarrassment. We use deodorants in order to avoid social embarrassment, isn't it? And project and rejection and greater social acceptance through use of certain products. This encourages consumers in developing a positive attitude towards brand linked with social acceptance, confidence, appreciation of being attractive and desirable to the opposite sex to a favorable extent. Another function is knowledge function. Does the product help me to organize the information? Does the product meet the needs for orders and structure? Here, the individuals generally have a very strong need for knowledge and seek consistency, stability, and understanding. To fulfill this need, attitudes help people organize the considerable amount of information to which they are exposed every day. They ignore irrelevant information and store what is meaningful to them. The knowledge function also reduces uncertainty and confusion. The more enlightened you are, there is lesser chances of confusion. Advertising is a means of acquiring information about products and services. Comparative advertising attempts to change consumers' negative attitude towards the desired brand based on prior knowledge by emphasizing advantages over the competitive brands. Now, attitude models, when we talk about, there is this model called tri-component attitude model. According to this model, attitude consists of three main components. The first one is cognitive component. We simultaneously have provided you with a diagrammatic representation. Cognitive component, affective component, and conative component. When we talk about cognitive component, they basically revolve around knowledge and beliefs. Here, the consumer's belief about an object are the attributes they ascribe to it. Right? I'll give you an example also. These beliefs are based on a combination of the knowledge, experience, and perceptions about the attitude object. Say, for example, I think BMW are quality cars. They are based on your knowledge, your belief, right? Your knowledge. So BMW, according to you, are quality cars. So now for most attitude object, consumer have a number of beliefs, and that a specific behavior will result in specific outcome. Right? And when we talk about affective component, what basically affective component means? It is related to emotions, it is related to feelings. So consumer feelings and emotional reactions to an object represents the affective component of an attitude. This relates to consumers' overall evaluation of the attitude object. Consumers' belief about a brand's attributes are multidimensional, but the feeling component is only one dimensional. The consumer says, I like thumbs up, or thumbs up is no good. Okay, just carrying forward the example of BMW. I feel good about myself when I drive a BMW. It's related to emotions, right? Another is conative, which is related to the behavioral aspect, right? Behavior, it is a behavioral component. It is the likelihood or tendency of an individual to respond in a certain manner towards an attitude object. Again, carrying forward the example of BMW, I will buy a BMW next time. It's the consumer's intention, it's his behavior that he will buy a BMW next time. Alright? Another example, a series of decisions to purchase or not to purchase a Canon inkjet printer or recommend it to friend would reflect the behavioral component of an attitude. Alright? Now, what are the factors that inhibit relationship between beliefs, feelings, behavior? So, what are the factors? So, one such factor basically is lack of consumer involvement. A favorable attitude is required, is needed, or motive before it can be translated into an action. Also, attitudes are less likely to reflect behavior for low involvement products. Right? Lack of purchase feasibilities. Right? According to A. Sahani, consumer may have a very positive attitude towards a particular brand but may not have the ability. Let's take an example to it. A consumer may evaluate an Omega watch very positively. The person is evaluating, he has the likelihood, right? He has a positive attitude very positively, but the watch is not a realistic alternative due to insufficient funds. It is not feasible. Thus, attitudes are not always related to behavior. I have a good behavior I have a good belief to buy a product, good feelings, but then the product is not feasible. It's not matching my pocket. Then it is difficult. Another is lack of personal experience with the product. What happens when there is a lack of personal experience with the product? Right, their attitudes are more likely to be, related to the subsequent purchases. When consumers have personal experience with the product, they may have a favorable attitude in the subsequent purchases. Lack of product experience may cause weakly held attitudes that are not related to the behavior. Another is lack of personal experience with the product. That we've just personal experience with the product. Another thing that we could discuss is lack of relation between consumer values and beliefs. If consumers' brand beliefs are not closely linked to consumers' value, there is a difference, digression between consumers' brand belief and its values. Consumers' attitudes are likely to be linked to the behavior. For example, many consumers believe that personal points weight loss program is very effective, but this belief is not going to predict their behavior. A consumer have no interest in losing weight. They say, for example, yes, they are very effective, they can help in reduction of weight loss to a very good extent, but then if they do not have an attitude themselves to, they do not have an interest to lose weight, then what happens? The point in question is of no use. Another thing is effect of market condition. A steep increase in the price of a favored brand may influence consumer to switch to other cheaper alternatives with no change in attitudes. Sales promotion may influence consumers to buy a less preferred brand, or unavailability of the preferred brand may cause consumers to buy less preferred brand with no change in the attitude. Right? These are simple market conditions. There are hike in prices, you have no other option but to buy less favored brand, less a cheaper brand as compared to your favored expensive brand, because the prices are high. Similarly, good sales promotion, you know, added advantages, gifts with an unfavorable, undesired product, less preferred product, right? Associated with some gifts, you tend to buy it because of the associations, gifts association. Another is your purchase decision. Brand attitudes could also be measured independently of intervening factors. This could be purchase situations, right? Now, another is poor attitude accessibility from memory. Consumers store brand belief in long term memory as a cluster of belief. According to Russell at Fazio, they have reported that lack of relationship between attitudes and behavior may be because some attitudes are so weakly held that they are not accessible. They wash away. Another is learning attitude, consumer attitudes, right? So consumers sometimes purchase new products with prior experience with the category based on their favorable attitude towards a brand name. For example, if a consumer who has had a satisfying experience with Samsung refrigerator, washing machine, and television, and no prior experience with the microwave oven of the same brand, but just because he had a satisfying experience with Samsung, he will buy a Samsung microwave oven. In this situation, according to classical conditioning theory, the established brand, that was Samsung, serves as an unconditional stimuli that we discussed in the last session. Through past satisfying experiences and new product, that is oven, it becomes a conditioned stimulus. Personal experience with a product or service is an important factor in the formation of attitude. Attitudes thus developed tend to be more enduring and resistant to change compared to indirect experience that consumer develop as a result of exposure to ad. Next to direct personal experiences are family, friends, and those individuals we admire or respect influence in forming the attitude. So, the family is a particularly important influence because this is where we acquire many of our basic values and beliefs through reinforcement of behavior. In case of high involvement rational purchases, consumer form positive or negative attitude as a result of detailed information processing. However, this detailed information processing leads to just two or three important beliefs that determine the resulting attitude. This means that advertisers need to focus on a very limited number of relevant differentiating points about a product or a service. Now, when we talk about changing attitudes, right, it it is an important strategy consideration for most marketers in order to alter the consumer attitude and reinforce the existing positive attitude about their brand, right? Reinforcing attitude is comparatively easier than changing attitudes, right? To reinforce what is actually there, which is already there, is easier than creating a new attitude. Now, there are different ways. It is easier to change belief than desired benefits. Marketers could attempt either to change brand belief or change the benefit consumers desire by changing the values of the attributes. Consumers' desired benefits are more enduring than beliefs. Another is it is easier to change brand belief than brand attitude. A high involvement hierarchy model suggests that change in beliefs precedes a change in attitude. That means change in belief would happen first and change in attitude happens afterwards. Thus, under conditions of high involvement, changing consumers' belief should be easier than changing their brand attitude. It is very important to note it. Another is changing attitude is a more relevant vehicle than belief for hedonic products. Products which are based on emotions or fantasy rely on feelings rather than beliefs. Products purchased for pleasure are high involvement, and due to this reason, attitudes are more relevant strategic vehicles for changing attitudes. Another is it is easier to change attitudes for low involvement products. Under conditions of low involvement, consumers are not committed to the brand. So it becomes all the more easier to change their attitudes toward such products, right? Which carries low involvement. It is easier to change weak attitudes than strong. It is but obvious. If a consumer do not hold strong feelings, if they do not have a strong attitude about any brand, any commitment is non-existent and the brand switching is quite common, then it is very easy. It is easier to change attitude of consumers who have less confidence in their brand evaluation. Consumers who are little confident about their ability to evaluate a brand, then it is easier to change their attitude, right? Consumers who are not really sure of their valuation of a brand tend to be more receptive to the information, advertising messages, and more prone to attitude change. Now, when we talk about attitude change strategies, so one is called multi-attribute model and attitude change, which comprises of changing values placed on product attributes, which basically means most consumers consider some product attributes to be more important than the others. Marketers often try to convince consumers about the superiority or importance of those attributes on which their brands are relatively stronger. All right. Another is changing consumers' belief. It is a common and effective approach adopted by most of the marketers to change attitude. Here, the focus is on cognitive component. The strategy of changing belief focuses on shifting belief about the performance of brands on one or more attribute. All right. Another is changing brand evaluation. This strategy basically focuses on influencing consumers' overall brand attitude without any reference to any specific attribute. All right. Another is changing behavior. Consumers' purchase or use behavior may precede the development of cognition and effect. Consumer frequently try inexpensive new brands in the absence of any prior knowledge or effect. Uh, all right. Another is Katz's functional theory and attitude change. All right. Here Katz, pointed out four functions performed by attitude. The first is changing attitude through utilitarian function. So one very effective approach to changing brand attitude is to show how the product can solve a problem not considered earlier, right? So a product whose basic attribute was to serve a utility, if that is highlighted, the attitude could be changed. Another is changing attitude through the value expressive function. Attitudes reflect our general values, lifestyle, and outlook. So it is very difficult to change value expressive function because these relate to personal values and are very important to people. For example, committed vegetarian consumer would not use products that contain animal fat. Another is changing attitude through ego defensive function. Very strongly held attitudes often serve the ego defensive function and are least likely to accept outside influences. A cigarette smoker or a tobacco chewer is quite likely to ignore any information about the dangers associated with smoking or tobacco chewing, right? Changing attitudes through knowledge function. This approach of changing attitude is based on consumers' cognitive needs. Knowledge function facilitates the information processing task. Most marketers attempt to create a clear and unambiguous positions for their brands to develop favorable consumer attitudes. Post purchase attitude change. The first one is cognitive dissonance theory, and the another one is attribution theory. And when we talk about cognitive dissonance theory, here the consumers seek to determine causes, attributions for events, often after the fact, right? The cognitive dissonance theory suggests that consumer experience a feeling of doubt, discomfort, or anxiety after making a relatively high involvement purchase decision. These feelings have been referred to as cognitive dissonance. Purchase decisions, particularly of expensive items, require some amount of compromise, and due to this reason, feeling of dissonance are quite normal. It's the probability of experiencing dissonance, and the intensity depends on the degree of commitment. Like if it is easier to alter the decision, the consumer is less likely to experience dissonance. The importance of decision. If the purchase decision is very important, very important, it is more likely that the consumer will experience the dissonance. The difficulty of choosing among the alternative, like decision difficulty depends on the number of alternatives considered, the number of relevant attributes linked with each alternative, and the extent to which each alternative possesses the attribution not present in the other alternative. The another is individual's personality characteristics. Some individuals have a greater tendency of experiencing anxiety than the others. If the individual happen to be a nervous type, it is more likely that he or she would experience dissonance. Another is, then we talk about strategies how we could reduce the dissonance. It's by providing additional product information, right, and suggesting for product care and information relating to maintenance through brochures. Another is we can provide warranties and guarantees to reduce post-purchase doubts. Another is ensure good service and immediate follow-up on complaints to provide post-purchase support. Advertise reliable product quality and performance to reassure that recent purchasers of product satisfaction. Another is follow-up. It's very important that after the purchase with direct contact to make sure that the consumer understand how to use the product and ensure that he is satisfied. Now, what is attribution theory? It is basically here the consumer seeks to determine causes, that is attribution for events, often after the fact, right? So now these are two questions that are for you. These are the factors. What are the factors that inhibit relationship between beliefs, feelings, and behavior? And what are the functions of attitude? Thank you and have a nice day. We learn, keep learning. Thank you.